I've been a forest ranger for almost a decade now, stationed deep in the Colorado backcountry. Most people think our job is just hiking, watching sunsets, and helping lost hikers. And sure, there's plenty of that. But out here, in the remotest parts of the forest, far from cell towers, cities, and sometimes even common sense, there are things that don't make it into the guidebooks. My post was Fire Tower 9, perched above a thick patch of forest, known as Red Pine Grove. The name came from the reddish tint of the tree bark and the coppery soil. It was beautiful in the daylight, but once the sun dipped below the tree line, everything changed. This story takes place in late October, just before our seasonal shift rotation. I was on the final night of a week-long solo shift, something I'd done before. No problem. But that year, the air felt heavier, like something was waiting. Around 2:30 a.m., I was sitting inside the tower's small observation room. The wind was calm, the trees were still, and the only sound was the low buzz of the tower's old fluorescent light. I was going through a weather log when I heard it. 3 high-pitched whistles. Short, sharp, and deliberate. At first, I thought it was a bird. Then I realized it had come from the direction of the east. Ridge Trail, a path that had been closed off for 2 months. Due to rock slides, no hikers were supposed to be out there. I paused, waited. Nothing. A few minutes later, again, the same 3 notes, but closer. I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the forest. There was no movement, no flashlight, nothing out of place. Still, I radioed base to check if any rangers had been reassigned. Without notice. Static. I tried again. More static. The signal was dead. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs leading up to the tower. Heavy, slow, deliberate. They stopped just below the landing. I grabbed my flashlight and yanked open the door. "Who's there?" I shouted. "You're on restricted grounds." No answer. Just the wind, suddenly picking up like a whisper moving through the pines. I pointed the flashlight down the stairwell, but it only lit up empty steps and shadows. I took a few cautious steps outside, shining the beam in a slow circle around the tower base. Nothing. But then, from the tree line, those same 3 whistle notes again. Clear as day, louder than before, as if someone were right there, just beyond the beam's reach. I stepped back into the observation room and locked the door. I wasn't about to play hero. 15 minutes passed, then 30, just silence, until the light bulb above me flickered and went out with a pop, plunging me into total darkness. And then I heard breathing, not my own, raspy, shallow, coming from the far side of the room. I spun around with the flashlight. There, standing by the window, was a man in a ranger uniform, but not like ours. It looked old, faded, torn at the sleeves, mud-stained. His face was pale and stretched unnaturally tight across his skull. No lips, just skin where a mouth should be, and no eyes, just sunken hollows. The thing raised its head slightly and whistled 3 notes. The exact same 3 I'd been hearing all night. I backed into the corner, fumbling for my sidearm. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't even undo the holster. The figure took a step forward. The wood under its boots didn't creak. It was like it wasn't fully there. Then it turned and walked through the wall. Not out the door, not down the stairs. Through the wall. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I just stood there, listening to the wind howl outside and the blood pounding in my ears. When the sun finally rose, I ran outside to see if there were any tracks. There were. Bare footprints. Long, skeletal. The toes looked almost like fingers. They circled the tower once, then stopped. No leading trail. No sign of departure. They just ended. I filed a report, of course. My supervisor brushed it off as stress and sleep deprivation. "You've been up there too long alone, Delaney," he said. "You need a break." But I knew what I saw. A week later, I went to visit the local Forest Archive Center. I don't know why. I just needed to know if anyone else had reported something similar. That's when I found an old logbook from 1978. A ranger named Gregory Lorne had been stationed at Fire Tower 9. The last entry in his book read, "He keeps whistling from the trees. Always 3 notes. Every night, closer. If this is a prank, it's going too far. But I don't think it is anymore." Lorne was never found. They said he walked off in the night and vanished into the grove. They never recovered his body. The part that still gives me chills? In the back of the logbook, scribbled over and over on the final page, was the same musical notation. 3 notes. Simple. Haunting. I left Red Pine Grove the next season. I took a different post further south, closer to town, less remote. I still love the forest, but I won't go near that grove again. And sometimes, when I'm in bed, long after midnight, I swear I hear it. 3 notes. Faint, but always the same. Like a reminder that he's still out there, waiting. People think being a park ranger means peace, nature, and the great outdoors. But after what happened in Black Hollow, I started seeing the forest differently. Black Hollow Caverns sits in a secluded section of protected land in northern Arizona. It's off limits to the public due to the unstable terrain and frequent cave-ins. But locals tell older stories, whispers, about people entering the cave and never returning. I always thought those were just legends, until I had to go in myself. It started with a missing person report. A local man, Eli Marsh, had been camping just outside the restricted boundary and was last seen heading toward the Black Hollow region. His car was found parked near the perimeter trail. I was sent with a small search team to investigate. After combing the area for hours with no sign, we decided to split up. Classic mistake, I know. I followed the ridge line until I came upon something strange, an old wooden sign, buried halfway in overgrowth. Most of the paint had peeled away, but I could still read it. Silence beyond this point. Do not enter. It wasn't an official sign from the Forest Service. Just beneath the sign was the entrance to a cave. Narrow, dark, and unnaturally cold for that time of year. I radioed the others. Nothing. Just static. I tried twice more. No response. I should have waited. Should have backed off. But something about the place pulled me in. I clicked on my flashlight and stepped inside. The air shifted the second I crossed the threshold. The usual forest hum, wind in the trees, birds, distant rustle, was just gone. I couldn't even hear my own footsteps, like the cave was absorbing sound itself. I kept walking, deeper into the stone belly of the earth. The walls were damp and covered in handprints. Dozens of them, some small like a child's, others much larger. I moved the light over one and saw something carved beneath it in the rock. "He hears what you don't say." A chill ran through me. I kept moving, trying not to let my nerves get the better of me. 20 minutes in, the tunnel widened. That's when I saw it. Eli's backpack, torn open and scattered across the floor. I ran over and checked the contents. ID, phone, crushed granola bars. It hadn't been sitting long, but Eli was nowhere. I scanned the cave with my light, and my beam landed on something that made my blood freeze. A figure, standing motionless, facing the cave wall. It was tall, impossibly thin, its back turned to me. It wasn't moving or breathing. I tried to call out, but the moment I opened my mouth, I realized I couldn't hear my own voice. Not muffled, not echoing, just nothing. Absolute silence. I stepped closer, flashlight trembling in my hand. I was about 10 feet away when the figure slowly began to turn. Its face wasn't right. It had no mouth, no nose, just hollow, black holes where ears should be. Like it was built to listen, but not to speak. And it did something I'll never forget. It tilted its head, as if hearing a sound I couldn't. And then it mimicked me, my exact posture, my stance, like it had been studying me for a while. I tried to step back, but I stumbled and dropped my flashlight. The beam rolled across the stone floor, illuminating the wall behind me. That's when I saw them, hundreds of people, carved into the rock, mouths stitched shut, hands raised in silence. And each one had the same dark ear cavities as the thing in front of me. I grabbed the flashlight and turned back. Only the cave was empty again. No figure, no footsteps, no trace. Just that crushing, awful silence. I backed out of the chamber as fast as I could without turning my back completely. The deeper I had gone, the more I felt like I was being recorded, not watched. Exactly, but heard in a way that bypassed sound. When I finally stepped back into the sunlight, it was like a dam burst. Every forest sound rushed back into my ears. Birds, wind, leaves crunching underfoot. It was almost overwhelming. I collapsed on the grass, panting. My radio crackled back to life. One of the other rangers had found Eli, alive, but disoriented, shivering, and unable to speak. He was discovered over 2 miles from the cave entrance, barefoot, with bloody scratches all down his arms and legs. We got him to the hospital, but he never spoke again. No trauma to the throat or vocal cords. Just silence. He could write, but the only thing he ever wrote was, "It hears what you think." They placed him under observation for months. Eventually, his family took him home. I heard he lives alone now, never leaves his house, and covers his ears with thick pads even when he sleeps. I filed my report, of course, left out the details about the carved people and the listening figure. Who would believe that? A few weeks later, the Forest Service quietly reinforced the Black Hollow perimeter and took down the old signs. They posted new ones with stronger warnings, but still didn't mention what's really in there. I know I sound crazy. I get it. But here's the part that makes my stomach turn, even today. Sometimes, when I'm hiking, alone, miles from that cave, I'll stop and realize something is missing. Not sound, but thought. Like something's listening so hard that I can't even think straight. Just static in my brain. And that's when I know it's nearby again. Waiting, not to hear what I say, but what I don't. You don't notice how often you look into mirrors until they start looking back at you. I was stationed at Elk Hollow Reserve in Montana, posted at Watchtower 3 for a 2-week solo assignment. Remote, but scenic. Long hikes, crisp air, silence thick enough to weigh on your lungs. It's the kind of place you only hear birds in the morning, and nothing after dark. The tower was small: one bed, a kitchenette, a desk, and a mounted mirror above the wash basin. I didn't think anything of it until day 3, when I started catching something strange in its reflection. At first, it was just movement, flickers, the feeling someone was walking behind me when I washed up, only to turn and find nothing there. I brushed it off as nerves or isolation. But the second time I saw it, I had just finished eating when I went to wash my plate. I leaned over the sink, and in the mirror, behind my left shoulder, I saw a man standing near the door. He wore ranger gear, but it wasn't one of ours. His face was pale, drawn, eyes pitch black. I spun around so fast I knocked the plate onto the floor. No one was there. When I looked back at the mirror, he was still there. Only this time, he was closer. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. It wasn't possible. I turned to the mirror, waved my hand. My reflection moved, but his did not. I shut the bathroom door and didn't open it until morning. The next day, I tried convincing myself it was fatigue, mirror illusions, maybe a stress hallucination. But by nightfall, I was avoiding the glass entirely. That didn't help, because the next time, he didn't wait for me to look into the mirror. He showed up in the window's reflection. I was writing my report on the logbook when I noticed the glass was darker than usual. I leaned in, and there he was, standing in the corner of the room behind me. I didn't dare turn, just slowly shut the notebook, grabbed the flashlight, and backed out the door. I spent that night in the small utility shed 30 yards from the tower. Uncomfortable, freezing, but at least the windows were frosted. When I returned at dawn, the tower door was wide open. I had locked it from the outside. Inside, the mirror had fogged up from the inside. Scrawled into it, in long finger marks, were 5 words. "You only see what's missing." That's when I called it in. Told dispatch I had a possible security breach or prank. They said they'd send a team out the following day. I had to survive one more night. I barricaded the mirror, taped paper over the windows, turned off all lights, and sat on the floor with my flashlight and my old radio, an analog model that only worked half the time. I kept it on, tuned to static, just for the noise. At 2:03 a.m., it cut out. Not turned off, just silent, like something had taken the sound away. I felt it before I saw it. A drop in the air pressure, a heaviness pressing on my shoulders like wet wool. And then, movement. Even with the mirror covered, I knew it was behind the glass. I started reciting the ranger's code aloud, anything to fill the silence. Observe and report. Preserve and protect. The words caught in my throat, because I could hear someone else saying them too, in sync with me. But they weren't using my voice. It sounded like a slow, gurgled echo, like my voice was being dragged underwater and played back a second later. I ripped down the paper and looked straight into the mirror. There he was, standing right behind me. But this time, his face looked like mine. My jaw, my hair, my expression. But his eyes were wrong. They were bleeding black tears. And when I moved, he didn't. I shouted, through my flashlight. The mirror shattered, glass everywhere. And suddenly, he was gone. Just like that. Silence again. The relief was short-lived, because in the middle of the night, just before dawn, I saw something in the shards of mirror on the floor. Tiny reflections, scattered. Dozens of him, all watching. Some smiling, some screaming, some with no face at all. I covered them and waited for sunrise. When backup arrived, I was already packed and ready to leave. I didn't explain what happened, just said the tower needed a new mirror, maybe stronger locks. They replaced the mirror. But that's not the end. Because 2 months later, I got a message from Ranger Cody Banks. He'd been reassigned to Watchtower 3. His message was simple. Hey Keller, weird thing. This new mirror in Tower 3, I swear I saw someone behind me tonight. Thought it was me, but it wasn't. He thought it was funny. I didn't. I blocked his number. You can laugh or call me crazy, but I know what I saw. And if you ever take a solo post with a mirror facing you, cover it. Because the worst thing about the man in the mirror is that every time you look, he learns how to look back.